This conference will now be recorded.
Hey all, good morning.
Good morning, Naveen sir.
Very good morning. Yeah.
This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah. So we will start with connection pool today. Okay. So we are done with IOC discussion. Okay. Spring core concept successfully. We discussed almost all the topics from Spring core. If we miss anything, okay, we will have a session to cover the topics as well. So do practice all the Spring core examples. Okay. As this is much important one. Okay. And we are going to start with Spring JDBC. The next module, Spring JDBC. Okay. So here the two in Spring JDBC will start with connection pools. So as we know, this JDBC concept is for CRUD operations. So if the use case is the MVC use case, if you have a form, when you submit the data from form, we read through controllers and the data will be forwarded to service. Service need to forward the data to DAO. DAO finally will do save operation into database. Form data will go to controller. Controller data will go to service. Service will send it to DAO. DAO should handle all the CRUD operations. DAO should handle all the CRUD operations here. So basic operations, what we do from DAO, mostly save operation. Save the record form data, save form data, update form data. If you want to delete, delete methods. Save, update, delete, select operations, find. If you want to find all operation, or find by so and so property using find. Let's say if you have name, email, address kind of details, right? Find by name, find by email. That find by methods we might have. Find by name, find by email, find by address. So by searching with name, if somebody try to get the data using name, we can search. Using email, we can search. Using address, we can search. So this kind of methods we implement. This kind of methods we implement in DO class. We call them as CRUD operations. We call it as CRUD operations. Okay. So these all are the particular methods we are going to use in our CRUD operations. Okay. So these all operations are going to perform on database table. These all operations are going to perform on database tables. We will have database table, and on top of the database table, these all operations are going to perform. These all are operations going to perform on tables. We'll have a database table with so and so columns. We do run our operations on these tables. Consider ID, name, email, address. Like this, we have data. If you have such columns, we do CRUD operations here. So for doing CRUD operations from the DAO, DAO need a connection object. Okay, DAO need a connection object. In general, if you don't know about connection pools concept, what generally you people do is in each method, like inside service method, inside DAO class save method, you will open a connection. First, you will open a connection, and then you will create a statement. Okay, you create a statement. Then next, finally, you will close the connection. Okay, inside each method, you will be going to do this. So if you don't know the connection pools concept, this is how you used to do this. Every time you open a connection, and you create a statement, For each method, you will be going to do this. For save operation, open connection, execute your statement, then close connection. For update, open connection, create a statement, close connection. Open connection, create a statement, close connection. Everywhere, every time you used to write like this. If you do this, this is very much costlier operation. Okay, if you do this, what will happen? For every method, if you do open statement, close connection, if you do this again and again and again for every method, what will be happening is here, your application might not perform well. If you do this, what will happen? Your application will not perform well. I'll tell you the reasons. Okay, this is a traditional code that you are writing: opening connection, creating statement. This normal JDBC methodology that you use here. Okay, so in a normal JDBC methodology, you do this. In a normal JDBC, you do this. In a methodology, you do this. So when you do this, there are problems. Okay, we'll discuss about the problems now. There are some problems. There are some problems when you do this. In a normal JDBC methodology, there are problems. What are that? Consider you have a form here. Consider you have a form here. So every minute, there are 100 plus requests. There are 100 plus requests. There are 100 plus requests. Every minute there are 100 plus requests are coming from here. So throughout the day, 24 into 100 requests, 24 into 60 into 100. So 600 into 24, around 12,000 plus requests that you are getting every day. 12,000 plus requests you are getting every day, right? Every minute 600 for every hour. 600 into 24 hours. Okay, 6,000. Yeah, around 12,000 plus request for a day. For a day you are getting. So if you consider a day, for every day 12,000 plus registrations are happening. If you do this normal methodology for opening connection and for creating statement and to close the connection, 12,000 times your DAO will hit a database for opening connection. 12,000 times it will ask database, please give me a connection. 12,000 times it will ask database, please give me a connection. And once done with that operation, it will give connection back to database. Basically how database will work, right? So when you request for a connection, when you call open connection, when you do open connection, right? When you open a connection, database needs to, DB need to open a socket. DB will open a socket for you. It will open a socket for you. Okay, when you call open connection, DB will open a socket for you. And when you call close connection, DB socket will be closed. DB socket will be closed. So internally DB will do these two operations. When you open connection and when you close connection, a socket will be opened and a socket will be closed. So this socket open close will be executed for 12,000 times for a day. Okay, you make this 12,000 requests for opening connections and for closing connections. So internally your database software or your database server need to do open connections and close connections for 12,000 times. So you are increasing a lot of network traffic. So if you do this, what will happen? If you follow this, lot of network traffic between DB and application. Between your database and application, there will be huge network traffic, because every time you are trying to opening a connection and closing the connection. This is Yeah, this may be not a big problem. This may be not a big problem. As you are using enterprise software, you are paying license, maybe this is not a big problem for you. But what will happen when you have concurrent users? When you have concurrent users, as I'm saying, every minute 100 users are coming. Maybe in some scenarios, a minute, right? When the traffic is fused during evenings or mornings, when users are ready to submit their request, consider a minute is having huge traffic, like 1,000 plus requests are sending during morning 10 to 11. 10 to 11, you are getting huge number of requests. 1,000 plus requests are coming for every minute during 10 to 11. 1,000 plus requests are coming. To accommodate this 1,000 plus requests, right? 1,000 plus request data coming to my controller, controller sending to service. Service is trying to operating these methods. Save, update, delete, find or find any methods. 1,000 plus times it is trying to open a connection and to close the connection. When you have a concurrent users, 1,000 plus concurrent users, your database may not support that many concurrent users requests. Maximum to maximum, if it is a commercial database, you might have 100 plus concurrent connections, 100 plus sockets it might open for you. 100 plus sockets, 100 plus sockets it might open for you. 100 plus sockets it might open for you concurrently. So when you get 1,000 requests, what will happen? As your database is having around 100 sockets only, for first 100 people it will give the connection. For the remaining 900, they will get the exceptions. When you have huge concurrent requests, when you have multiple concurrent requests, DB may not accommodate that many connections. DB may not accommodate that many connections. DB may not accommodate that many connections. So what will happen if not accommodate that many connections? Immediately you will get SQL exception. Immediately you will get SQL exception. Okay, immediately it will throw SQL exception to the user. So a lot of network traffic between your DB and application is happening, and you will getting exceptions also sometimes when you have huge network traffic. So how to avoid this? How to avoid the network traffic? How to avoid the exceptions, and how to improve performance also? When you do this job, every time opening connection and closing connection, it will take a lot of time. So it may not give good performance also. It may not give good performance also for your application. So performance lag also you will see. Okay, performance lag also you will observe. Performance lag. So your request always will take long time, rotate, then it will finish, or it will get exceptions. So the performance lag also we can see. How to avoid this? Okay, particularly when you are dealing with databases, how to avoid these three? When you have concurrent request, how to accommodate that many connections? How to decrease the network traffic between database and your application? And how to improve the performance as well here. So we can achieve all these. By using connection pools. We can achieve all this by using connection pools. Instead of going with this traditional approach, what I will do, if I go with connection pool, concept, connection pools will reduce a lot of network traffic, and they will give the good performance as well. Okay, and it will not throw even exceptions also. Okay, there are beautiful features from connection pools. So in case of connection pool, we will not open connection every time. We will avoid this. Okay, we'll avoid this. Open connection is not happening every time. We don't open connection every time, and we don't close the connection also. We avoid these two statements. Open and close operations we never perform for every operation. For every operation, we never perform them. We avoid them. We avoid open connections, close connections. Just we execute the statement. Just we execute the statement. Then how to get the connection and how to close the connection means we create a pool. We create a pool. We create a pool. We call it as connection pool. Okay. Pool means nothing. Multiple objects we combined in a single place. We create a multiple objects and keep it into a single object, like list, right? Into list we can add multiple objects. Into map also we can add multiple objects using key value pair. Connection pool also similar type. Connection pool also is a collection internally. Okay, so there will be a list object. Inside that list, what we will do during application startup, while application start, we create as many maximum connections as we want. Okay, if your database is providing up to 100 connection support, we create all that 100 connections during the application startup itself. During the application startup itself, we create all that connections here. We create all that connections here during the application startup. During the application startup itself, we create all the connections into connection pool, which means connection objects. Okay, consider them like a connection objects. So that many, whatever number of connections we want, we create all that connection objects during the application startup itself. During the application startup itself, we create all these connections into connection pool. We create all the connections into connection pool. Internally, connection pool will use, connection pool itself is a design pattern. Okay, a pool design pattern it will follow, and it will create all the connections, and it will keep them in live until you shut down your application. Until shut down application, these connections it will keep it in live. From your database, it will get all the connections here during the application startup itself. During the application startup itself, it will get all the connections here into connection pool. Now, when you want to perform CRUD operation in your save method or update method, wherever you want, we generally not going to open connection on database. We fetch connection from the connection pool. Okay, we fetch, instead of open connection, what we do here, we fetch a connection. We fetch connections from database. We avoid this, right? We avoid open connections. Instead of opening connection, we fetch connection. We get a connection from pool. Get connection from pool. We will get connection from pool. We will get the connection from pool as a first step, and we perform required statement. Perform required execution. Statement execution. We perform required statement execution. Then we return connection back to connection pool. Close or return connection to pool. We get the connection from connection pool and we perform required statements, and then we return back it to pool. We return this back to pool. So when you get the connection, it will block a connection for you. It will reserve a connection for you. Internally, what it will do is it will reserve a connection for you. It will reserve when you start using it. If you pick a connection, it will pick that connection for you and it will reserve it for you. Okay, so if you need one connection, it will bring that connection to you. Until you complete your operation, this connection will be with you. So when you return it back, then it will make it free. Then it will make it free to use by others. It will make it free to be used by others. So that when you get the concurrent users also, when you get hundreds or thousands of lakhs of users also, what will happen? For them, it will give connection from connection pool. Will they not get any exceptions like SQL exceptions? As I have maximum 100 connections here, 100 connections I have here, I have 100 connections. So at a time, I can able to provide 100 connections from my connection pool. Will I get any exceptions if I get the 1000 plus concurrent users? If I get 1000 plus concurrent users at a time, 1000 plus users, if they request, what it will do? For first 100, it will reserve all the connections. For first 100 people, it will reserve all the connections. Whoever comes first, for all of them, it will give the connections. For all of them, it will give the connections. And then next remaining 900 users, right? The connection pool, what it will do, instead of giving them exception, it will make them wait. In connection pool, we have one more feature. It can set others wait in a queue. It can set others wait in a queue. It can set others wait in a queue if connection not available. If connection not available, it will make the users wait. That waiting time also we can set. But the connection pool, not only putting this 100 connection, we can set the waiting time also. If you can set waiting time to 2 seconds, 2 seconds wait time if you configure, 2 seconds wait time if you configure, what will happen? When 1000 users request for performing each CRUD operation, it may not take more than a second or 2 seconds. So for first 100 users, it will execute operation in a milliseconds, and for the remaining users, right, it will make them wait for up to next 2 seconds. So between, if connections again returned back to connection pool, right, the same connection again, it will give it to the next 100 users. Like that, for all the 1000 users, it will give the same connections. For all the 1000 users, it will give the same connections by making them in a queue. By making waiting them in a queue, it will give the same connections. So that as a user, you will not see any exception. As a user, you will not see any exception, right? And as you are using the connection pool object, you are not calling database every time to open connection and to close connection. So only at the time of application startup itself, you are going to open all the 100 connections, and you will return back this 100 connections when you shut down only. When you shut down your application only, these connections will be returned back to database. Otherwise, all that 100 sockets will be opened until you shut down your application. Until you shut down your application, all connections will be with you. Okay, so that when you perform an operation, it will not ask database to open a connection, and once done with your operation, when you try to close, it will not close connection on database. So that requesting connection time, closing connection time also saved here, so that your application performance also will be increased. Your application performance also increased. So when I go with connection pool, network traffic will be reduced, and the multiple concurrent users can be served, and performance also improved. Okay, these three definitely we can achieve when we go with connection pools. So how to use this connection pool then? Okay, how to use this connection pool? If I want this connection pool, how I will get it? How I will get this connection pool? So if you want to use connection pool, right, in Java, in Java SQL package, right, Sun given a interface name called data source. For particularly whoever wants to implement connection pools, right, for them, Sun given data source interface, given, right, connection interface given to implement connection implementations. One single connection. If you want to implement multiple connections, if you want to create multiple connections, data source also given. It's an interface. For this interface, there are many third-party implementations. Like for connection, how we have Oracle connection, MySQL connection. This is the connection pool. Okay, a single connection means connection also is an interface. It will hold only one connection only. When it is the data source, it will hold multiple connections. Data source means multiple connections. Connection interface will hold only one connection, whereas data source will hold multiple connections. So for this connection interface, vendors given implementation, Oracle given one implementation, MySQL given implementation, every database vendor given their own connection implementations. Oracle partner given Oracle implementation, MySQL given MySQL implementation, DB2 given, except many database providers given implementations to Oracle connection. Similar way, when you want to create multiple connections, still you need to use your database connection only, but the pool concepts given by multiple vendors. Like open source vendors, we have Apache, given Apache basic data source. Basic data source. This is one implementation class. This is a class from that interface given by Apache. Apache basic data source. This is for connection pool. Okay. There is a C3P0 vendor, C3P0 provider. They given combo pooled data source. Combo pooled data source. They given one data source name called combo pooled data source. Combo pooled data source. This is also one class given from data source interface. C3P0 provider given. Similar way, we have data source from WebLogic provider. All the application server providers also given WebLogic, given WebLogic data source. If you have application server, you can use this WebLogic data source. This is also one implementation class from data source interface. Okay, so this is how we have multiple partners who given implementations from connection pool. And is that complex that to use these connection pools? No, they are simple bean classes. This is a simple bean class. This is a simple poso class. This is also a simple poso class. They have given as a simple poso classes. If you have poso class, you know how to play with it, right? So basic data source is a poso class. This poso class is having few setter methods. Same C3P0 class also having some setter methods. What are that setter methods? Set driver, set URL, set username, set password, right? And set maximum connections, set how many maximum active connections you want, set max ideal time, or set max waiting time, how much waiting time you want to put for user. The main important setter methods we have in this data source. These are the main setter methods we have in this data source. Along with them, when you want to use a connection, right? When you set maximum active connections 100 and the maximum waiting time, here we need to set it in a milliseconds. So 2 into 1000, 2000 means 2 seconds. So 2 seconds maximum waiting time. This is how you need to configure so that you will get 100 connections when you configure it. Now when you want connection from these 100 connections, right, you need to call get connection. There is a method called get connection. When you call get connection, it will give you one connection. When you call this get connection, right, out of this 100, one connection will be reserved to you. And when you want to return back the connection, we need to call close connection. We need to call connection dot close. When you use connection dot close, connection will not close down database. Instead of that, connection will return back to this pool. When you call get connection, right, out of 100 connections, if you create 100 connections, the maximum connections it will create 100. Out of 100, one connection will be reserved to you. It will return one connection for you. When you call connection close, the connection will return to pool. The connection will return to pool. It will not close any connection. It will return to pool. So these two methods we use. Wherever we want connection, we call the open connection. We call the open connection wherever we need, and we call close once we're done with our connection operation. Okay, the same thing with combo pool data source also. In combo pool data source also, they have given the same kind of setter methods. Okay, so how to get them? Just you need to download these jars. Basic data source jar you need to download. Apache given basic data source jar. If you download Tomcat, inside Tomcat libraries also you can see this. They given dbcp jar. The jar name is dbcp jar from Apache libraries. And combo pool data source you can download from Google. C3 P0 jar they given C3PO or P0 jar. Okay, connection pool jar they given. You just need to download and add it into your class path, and you can play with it. As this is poser, you know how to configure it in XML. Okay, you know how to configure this and how to pass the values. It's a simple approach to create connection. And by using this, if you do CRUD operations, you are going to achieve all these. You are going to reduce network traffic. You are going to avoid you are going to avoid these exceptions when you have concurrent users, and performance also will increase. Lot of performance changes you can see when you go with this approach. Okay, let us create an example for it. Okay, let me add jars here. Here I have all the database jars and connection pool jar files. Yeah, this is Tomcat DBCP jar file. Similar way, we should see combo pool data source DB2 JCC. This is for DB2 database. Okay, where it should be. I think this one, OSGI. Okay, no problem. I'm thinking that this OSGA is the file. Uh, for the combo pool data source. Okay, add your jar files, add your jars, and see this class JDBC class. Okay, this is the plain JDBC class. Plain JDBC class I written here. Simple main method. Okay, and here I'm loading my driver class and looping this statement for 25 times. Let it be 50 times. So 50 connections I'm trying to open it. Okay, 50 connections I'm trying to opening and closing. I don't put any sleep time also here. Okay, so you know how much fast loop will execute. Okay, so it will execute in a rapid speed. So in that speed, if you try to open 50 connections and close 50 connections, what will happen? I got the exception. See, up to 18 connections printed, and after 18 connection, listener refused the connection. Database listener refusing the connections. It is not allowing you to open because connections are not closed properly. You are trying to executing in a fast phase, but database is not that much fast to open connections and to close connections. Even for 50 requests, it is not able to serve it. So in case if you want to serve it, you need to put some sleeping time. I mean wait time. At least 1 second gap if you can able to give it, it's okay. Then it can able to it can able to close the connection to database and it can able to open the connection. So if you follow this approach, yeah, maybe it will allow you to open any number of connections. Nineteen, 20, yeah. So happily it is opening, but 1 second waiting time. is it the good practice by putting 1 second waiting time for every user operation by considering that I am getting multiple concurrent users request? Shall we put this? No, this is not the good practice. So unnecessarily user will wait. If you remove this, then there is a issue. When you have concurrent users request, there also you will see the exception. So to avoid that only, we bring this concept here, basic data source. Okay. So the basic data source is a class. Basic data source is a class that available from dbcp jar file. Okay. So create this class object and set your driver class name, URL, username, password, maximum active connections, and the waiting time. If you want to keep waiting time for user 10 seconds, no, we should not. Just make him 1 second. Who will wait? Still this 1 second waiting time, whoever not available connections, right? Those users only. So this is also very rare situation. They will wait for just 1 second because the CRUD operation will execute in a very milliseconds. So you need not to worry about it. Now what I'm doing, I created a connection pool object. Now I'm trying to opening connection from connection pool by using get connection. I'm opening connection and I'm closing connection. 25,000 connections I'm trying to open without any waiting sleep time here. 25,000 connections I'm trying to open here. Oh, got exception. Okay, database password. Done. Not even 1-2 seconds. 25,000 connections opened and closed. Is it really possible with the database if I use? See, concurrently 25,000 users can able to talk with the database in a second of time if I use connection pool. But that is not possible if I open connections directly on database. See, 25,000 it's a connection for you. But this is from connection pool, not from the database. Connection pool is reserved. Connection pool is reserved 15 connections. Only that 15 connections only serving you here. Okay, this much fast connection pool will execute. This much fast connection pool will execute. The same thing, instead of configuring bean here, you know how to bring this to XML, right? So just you can bring it to XML here. Create a Spring XML file. Create a Spring XML file. In Spring XML file, configure your basic data source class. Forge.apache, Apache, Tomcat, DBCP, basic data source. This is your bean class. And as you have setter methods, call that setter method. Set driver, set URL, set username, set password, set a maximum active connection, set waiting time. Give your driver, URL, username, passwords, and the maximum active. Same thing. The same stuff you can put here. And now you can use this connection wherever you want. Now this connection you can use wherever you want. So loading my XML and calling BDS application.get bean of BDS basic data source. The basic data source is child for data source. So I'm getting into data source object and trying to opening 500 connections, 5,000 connections or 50,000. Do any number you want. It will serve. No, password. Ooh. Hardly 1.5 second. See, 49,999 connections open. So this is how connection pools will improve lot of performance without any waiting times or exceptions. Okay. So when you are planning implementing any application, right, make sure that your application is having connection pool. If no connection pool, then you will see performance issues and exceptions lot. Okay. So similar way, like basic data source, there is a combo pool data source I told, right? You can use that one as well. Same thing. combo pooled data source. Actually, the jar file is not available here. That's why. Okay. Anyway, I'll send you that combo pooled data source jar also. Okay. You can try with that combo pool also. Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So yeah. So tomorrow what I will do is I'll create JDBC test by using these connections. We will see uh, JDBC Spring JDBC operations. Okay, that we will discuss tomorrow. We'll close JDBC tomorrow, and day after tomorrow I'll start with Hibernate. I'll take 2 days Hibernate sessions. If you already know, that's fine. Otherwise, attend that Hibernate session. And because Spring in Spring ORM, you don't see that internal Hibernate operations. I'll give you as an add-on, right? I'm giving you Hibernate sessions also after JDBC. 2 Hibernate sessions. I'll cover most of the important things from the Hibernate. Okay, so yeah, that's all for today. Tomorrow we'll continue with the JDBC session. Okay,
Okay,
you go
Naveen.
with the link which I shared and download all the examples I'll attach here. There, okay.